Great news. The suspect is in custody. I have just left Montgomery County Jail where he was taken, and he has been magistrated. He now will be taken to my jail and where his new residence will be. He was caught hiding in a closet underneath some laundry. They effectively made the arrest. He is uninjured.
That's San Jacinto Sheriff Greg Capers. They're very relieved to announce that they have captured Francisco Oropesa, who was on the run for 4 days or so after murdering 5 of his neighbors, including a 9-year-old boy in their house. Again, just over shooting. And as you heard Capers point out there, the suspect was found in a closet under some laundry. Whose closet, whose laundry, and whose house? There's more, even though they're talking about who all was potentially or potentially not arrested. Here's more.
Sheriff, is anyone else in custody or in questioning tonight?
No, ma'am. Nobody else is in custody tonight, and I'm assuming that they are still at the house questioning the people that were at the house where the suspect was arrested.
So this is all discovered Tuesday night this week. So as of today, there are more people that have been arrested. Let's go to those details. So by the way, he was found in this private room in Summer Hollow, just east of this is one of the most ironic parts about this whole thing. Just east of the tiny Texas city of Cut and Shoot. No. The name of the city is really called Cut and Shoot? Anyways, a local media reported that the resident belonged to Oropesa's aunt. And one of those taken into custody was Mr. Oropesa's wife, Divimara Lamar Nava. That's again according to the Associated Press as well. Ms. Nava reportedly denied any knowledge of her husband's whereabouts, but authorities believe she may have hidden him at the home where he was arrested. Here's her mugshot as she was taken in as well from this entire process. And another outlet also pointed out they were not officially legally married, but apparently partnership and probably called each other husband and wife again. And then her part in this has now been revealed as well. So the Chief Deputy Timothy Keene also said fewer than 5 people were arrested, but he also couldn't go into detail about the specific number also during that press conference. I assume potentially the aunt, unless she had no idea that her nephew was in the house after committing this crime and seeing it all over the place. I assume we'll get the details further about it. But this is where some of the things start going a little bit crazy. First of all, actually, the things that go crazy from the political point of views to the way people have taken this in to the way that we're probably going to go about the next step of this type of stuff is all getting jumbled up. We're going to get that in a second. But Benny, just off the top here, from the original nature of this crime to the characters involved to the response included, there's lots of moving pieces here. What were your thoughts as we went through this?
I don't know. I mean, the whole story is really just horrifying, like fundamentally, and I think speaks to like sort of the unhinged nature of the United States generally across the board, and just that people are very trigger happy in the United States, and that is fundamentally terrifying reality. But it's also very frustrating to see that a lot of people's family members will support them even when they're being trigger happy and literally murdering people, which is bad. And so, like, I get it if you have a family member that does something really horrible, like, you don't necessarily want to be the person leading the charge to go after them. But also at the same time, you don't actually need to go through great lengths to hide them from the law.
Yeah, they're looking for any kind of accomplices. That's maybe the only way it'll happen. Now, this is where these complications come because, again, his wife, in some reports just saying not officially, but his wife apparently had filed a protective order against him just last year, and now she's been arrested as part of this whole thing. This protective order filing said that Oropesa allegedly hit her with a closed fist, kicked her on the floor, pounded her head into the driveway gravel, and threatened her. Again, this is last year. She said the attack left her with a broken nose, a broken rib, a skull fracture, bruises, and a black eye. She declined medical attention and chose not to file charges against him, but she asked to file for a protective order. Now, as part of that protective order from June of last year, Oropesa was ordered to stay away from both she and her daughter for them to have no contact, and also barred from possessing a firearm or ammunition to vacate a residence that they shared. So I'll go into those details to mention now where the fallout happened, because we then there's this abuse nature of it. Again, he had a huge gun. That's what he committed the murder with. So you'd assume there's probably something about that that's an issue. We've seen how the governor pointed out that the victims were all undocumented immigrants in the country, but of course didn't use that language. And of course, Oropesa as well. So how did all this really come together? Because again, as this graphic then points out, he was believed to also been in the country illegal and haven't been deported, and he also had been deported by immigration officials 4 times previous to that. That brings us to what Greg Abbott was talking about, with everybody involved being here illegally, and then that downplaying the severe nature of these victims and the ends of their lives. Now, he did try to backtrack that a little bit after people then, of course, came for him for that language. And this is what he tweeted out. Simple as, great job by law enforcement in pointing out this arrest. And many folks in response to that wanted to point out how he wasn't very helpful with that whole thing in the way that he tried to politicize it. Here's the statement that they did release in response to the pushback and everything that he had said beforehand. Governor Greg Abbott issued this short statement with the representative expressing that regret if the information was incorrect. That is about all of the victims there, because one apparently was here legally. He said, we've since learned that at least one of the victims may have been in the United States legally. That's what Renee Ezzi said, a spokesperson for Abbott. We regret if the information was incorrect and detracted from the important goal of finding and arresting the criminal. Also, that spokesperson went on to then talk about how federal officials were the reasons why that information was incorrect. Again, never addressing the fact, Benny, that the whole first point from Governor Abbott was to talk about how the victims, including that 9-year-old kid, were here illegally, so that maybe there could be a little less sympathy towards it, or maybe he could set up that next political speech to talk about how much he hates folks, and then maybe get him some more political clout. But there are those issues with the fact that he was deported 4 times, and also still, of course, was not allowed to have any firearms or ammunition because of that violent background. So the question then becomes, I guess this is where the discussion can be, where does this land? Because look, we've got conservatives that'll talk about, look, all you libs, all you guys ever care about is letting these violent criminals run around on the loose. And then many of us progressives will be like, well, listen, as we continue to characterize people this way, the violence grows from folks who think they can just be these vigilantes. It's a tough thing to have to discuss, though. But this one particular case will probably have folks talking for a while. What are your thoughts on that part?
Well, I mean, when it comes to immigration, I'm actually pretty radical in the sense that I do actually think that we should have an open border system. And the reason for that is actually fairly simple. The big bad criminals that they say that they're stopping from coming into the country, you know, people like human traffickers and drug traffickers and stuff, those people have enough money, okay, to come back and forth legally with passports and stuff like that, right? So as just a random aside, that's just silly nonsense that they push. And there's a whole economic argument about why it doesn't make any sense to restrict immigration, at least from the standpoint of working class people. But of course, right wingers don't want to have that argument because their whole argument is based out of racism fundamentally. Specifically, the desire to dehumanize undocumented folks. I mean, specifically, the dehumanization of undocumented folks is something that giant companies in the United States love because it basically creates a hyper-exploitable workforce for them to basically underpay and not have labor protections and all of those things. And so right-wingers using this as an example of some sort of oh, you know, look at this crime, this, that, and the other thing. Are we really going to ignore that over the past, month, there have been 3 or 4 people that were literally killed for showing up at the wrong doorstep or driveway? It's just, this is a very American thing, fundamentally at the end of the day. And then going back to the issue of the protective order, if there's a situation that there is an abusive situation in the household, I know this is a wild idea, but maybe it would make sense to make sure that somebody does not have any access to firearms. What a wild concept. You know, aside from the fact that firearms are just way too easy to get, there's this layer of, violence against women is pretty much the #1 predictor of somebody eventually committing a murder or a mass shooting and something like that. And there's a whole discussion to be had about sort of fragile masculinity that is a very American thing, and how it plays out in terms of gun violence and unfortunately misogyny. And violent misogyny is a very, very strong predictor of somebody eventually committing a murder or something like that. And so fundamentally what we really need are preventative resources, because hearing that there's a protective order that was a year ago This was a very preventable situation. Just a teeny shred of decency and regulation and forethought could have prevented this from happening. But instead of acknowledging the preventableness of this situation, Republicans would rather turn it into some ridiculous racist talking point.
Let's not forget also this whole conflict started when Oropesa was out in his front yard shooting, I think it was an AR-15 around in the air, and then the victims came out and said, the baby's sleeping, can you quiet that down? Why is it so comfortable? Why is our society so comfortable with this type of scenario starting like that in the first place? What if this guy never ran up in the house and shot all these folks up? What if he was just shooting his AR-15 in the air for 20, 30 minutes? That's a problem. Let's keep it real, because that's a comfortable society. That's something we can go outside and go, oh, no, that's just Francisco shooting his AR-15 in the air. It's just Tuesday here. Why is that a comfortable thing? That's where we've gotten, and that's why, in many cases, people like me, maybe I'm the radical here too, Benny, I don't think anybody should have guns. That's just me. I'm that crazy lib who maybe thinks people shouldn't be murdering other folks with guns.